this is Alexis, and below this skin suit, I'm actually just 3 English bulldogs stacked on top of each other. This is part 2 of my book recommendations, because the first one was a bit too long and a bit too big. This is the part with all the non-fiction books, so I hope you're excited to watch. I'm going to transfer to my old self now and see you in the next one. Bye. And now we get into the thick of it, which is the non-fiction pile. And I just want to start this off by mentioning The Prisoners of Geography by Tim Marshall. Also, shout out to The Power of Geography, which is the sequel and actually is up there on my shelf. I didn't want to get it down. And that is actually the non-fiction book I brought on holiday with me, along with the Coca-Cola book. And I loved it. And then I got this, which is the prequel, the first book. There's also a third one, which I have not read yet. I really enjoyed this. As some people may know, I'm a journalist, and I am very interested in international affairs and geopolitics, and this, I think, is brilliant to get into it. I think if you're already an expert, it's probably not that interesting, but if you're starting to get into geopolitics, geopolitical dynamics, this is very interesting. And what I like about it is that it's politically quite neutral, I would say. I was missing, you're not gonna believe this, as a more leftist person, I was missing some of that kind of analysis here, but it's also fine that it doesn't have it. I certainly like that it doesn't have any right-wing stuff. So if you're a leftist yourself and expecting that, you're not gonna get that here in either of the 2 books, but I think it's very nice and neutral to get into this kind of topic, and I have expanded what I read on geopolitics since then, which we're also partially going to get into. And I think this is a really brilliant starting off point just to test the waters of if you are interested in geopolitics. If not, you're going to be informed about some things, and if yes, this is a great starting off point. So many things that came up in these 2 books since on the news, I was like, oh my god, I've read about this and I know even more about it that I could, autistically info dump on, but that's it. Now, talking leftist analysis of geopolitics, I want to mention 2 works. One of them, again, I don't have with me right now, so I'm just gonna mention and show another work by this author, which is Vijay Prashad. And this is Red Star Over the Third World, which is about how the Soviet Union interacted with and influenced the rest of the world throughout its run. And the book that I definitely want to recommend, and this is nice, this is very short, I think it's also a nice little treat. You're gonna get through this very quickly, and I just love the cover of this. Isn't this brilliant? Gorgeous. What I really want to recommend, though, is his book of a name that I cannot remember right now. I will put it up on screen, obviously, for you. But it's all about the history of the Third World, and it's lovely. I got this, I think, 10th anniversary or 15th anniversary edition, which has been, I think, overworked and updated, if I remember correctly. And it basically goes through the history through the lens of different cities, which were somehow instrumental in different things. For example, there's this one chapter, I think it's the third chapter, on Cairo, and it's all about the women's movement. So he took Cairo as a starting off point, and about the women's movement in Egypt, and then across the leftist third world, or not even leftist third world, just third world in general. And he uses these cities as settings to explain larger concepts like feminism or different economics and stuff like that. It's brilliant. I think certainly if you're leftist, you should read it, and even if you're not, you should read it. I think it's a brilliant book, and it obviously has a very leftist perspective. I think whether you want that or not, we're all, we can think by ourselves, so the books we read don't necessarily have to have our political opinions, and we can take what we want from them and leave what we don't. So I think everybody should just read this because it's just so informative and interesting, and it showcases so many different sides, because obviously the third world has been just kind of been pushed away as this one big concept, and it really gets into the nitty-gritty. I think probably if you're an expert on the topic, it might not be that super in depth for you, but getting into it, I think it's really great and brilliant and well written and interesting, and there's some personal elements as well, and super well researched from what I can tell, and big time recommendation. I think it's one of my all-time favorite nonfiction books, certainly. In a similar vein, I just want to highlight Planet of Slums by Mike Davis. I read this after the Vijay Prashad books. It's really interesting. This is a more like scientific based nonfiction book. It has a lot of tables and empirical information, which is not always the nicest read for sure. This is still very well written though, so it's nice to get it through, and it's also not that big. And it's literally just about slums in different big cities in the world, and I don't know, I guess I just never really thought about slums before. Yes, I'm very privileged with that, obviously. I was obviously aware they existed and what they are, but to actually get into the dynamics of how they work economically and politically and culturally was super interesting. This is a very specific niche book, certainly. I don't think I don't think everybody's going to be interested in this or enjoy this, but I certainly did. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was super interesting to read up upon, and maybe that's going to resonate with some people out there. This, I think, is also more politically neutral, maybe left-leaning. I'm not 100% sure. It's really more neutral and informative and science-based than, for example, the Vijay Prashad books. Moving on, I also read Doppelganger by, let me get this right, Naomi Klein, not the other one. If you read this, you're gonna know. This was brilliant. I love this. It's, how do I describe this quickly? It's partially a meltdown by the author, Naomi Klein, because she gets confused with Naomi Wolf, who has turned from like feminist icon into anti-vax conspiracy craziness. And they constantly, are getting confused, and she's losing her mind about this, and this is all in lockdown. And so she starts researching the concept of doppelgangers throughout history, and it's just brilliant. It has a bit of everything. It's personal, which is really interesting. I think that really opens the gates. She discusses different works of fiction as well, and then it's also a political book. I mean, obviously all art is political, but it's about politics, because it really explains well how kind of hippies joined forces with right-wingers throughout the lockdown in this like anti-vax movement, and how that created like a new right-wing dynamic. And the like informative parts of this are amazing already, but what truly makes it top tier is the fact that it's also so personal, and her personal meltdown and obsession with all of this. So I massively recommend this. So, seriously, it's a great book. Shout out Naomi Klein. You are loved. Next up, I want to massively shout out this book, Help I'm Addicted, A Trans Girl's Self-Discovery and Recovery by Rhiannon Stiles. This is not her first book. I think the first one was about being trans, and this is about being an addict. And this really changed my life because I'm, guess what, trans and also an addict. And this book is structured wonderfully. It's her own story of addiction, dealing with addiction, and then after every chapter, there are usually one or two anonymous personal stories from other queer people who are also addicts and who have, they just tell their own personal stories, and it's certainly a very heavy read, but it really opened a lot of gates for me to deal with my own addiction. And this made me go to AA meetings. It really advertises the blah 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 anonymous lifestyle, like the 12-step program lifestyle, which obviously helps a lot of people. And it's certainly about the intersection of being trans and addicted, but I think also non-addicts and non-trans people can probably draw a lot from this. It's very insightful, but certainly if you're trans and addicted, which a lot of trans people are, that's the thing, you should read this, absolutely. It's a great book. It's interesting, and it's not, obviously it's sad, but it's not a sob story, so you're gonna get through it well reading it. And yeah, it's maybe gonna give you the push. It certainly gave me the push to get the help that I need. A little bit about myself. Moving on, I am obsessed with new journalism as a genre. So I just brought out one work quickly to just talk about this, which is Truman Capote's The Duke and His Domain, which is one of the OG works, one of the greats of new journalism. This is about, what's his face? Marlon Brando. And an interview that Truman Capote did with him, but it's everything around the interview that is super interesting about it. And it's not long, obviously. This is just a very specific work. I just want to talk about new journalism in general. I think it's so interesting. It's such a beautiful way to tell stories. I have read a lot of other new journalism works. I have read the White Album by, what's her face? I can't believe I forgot her name, but I'll put it up on screen. I read this version that had the original White Album and then some other stories as well, which was brilliant. I gave that to a friend of mine, and I also have this other little book by hers, which is also like short nonfiction, and it was fantastic. I cannot believe I forgot her name. Style of writing is so cold and distant, yet so endearing. I love it. I've read some Gator Lee's. Great work of his is about the Vogue ladies, like the ladies working at Vogue. Fantastic, the way he describes them. It's this whole style of writing. If you don't know, it's telling nonfiction stories through a journalistic lens, but these authors also become part of the story in a sense. They're not, outside the story, which is what usually is the case in nonfiction and certainly journalism. And you can maybe consider it proper journalism. I know most people don't. It's seen as more just a style of nonfiction rather than a style of journalism. But I wish I really want to work to have the platform where I can write like that and report like that, whether you want to see it as nonfiction or journalism. It's that intersection, and it's so special, and the writing styles are just insane. There's also Hunter Thompson with a crazy writing style that I love, and there's just something so chic about it. I don't know, it's hard to describe, but you should certainly, if you're trying to dabble in nonfiction, because I know a lot of people just don't read it, I think you should definitely get into the new journalism authors. Certainly the classics are really worth it, and I think a lot of people are going to enjoy and find some gems there. And it's all this like mid-century excitement, like 60s, 70s. There's this whole Kool-Aid, acid, whatever thing. I have not read that one. I really want to. I'm really excited to. And yeah, just massively recommend checking out that whole genre and getting into it. And then one last thing I have to mention is my massive obsession with Wolf Schneider. This is the, as we say in Germany, Einstiegsdroge. This is what got me into him. I was gifted this book at the end of an internship I did. It's Deutsch für junge Profis, which is like German for young professionals, by Wolf Schneider. These are just going to be German exclusive, I'm pretty sure, but I think this should be taught in German classes in school. Everybody should know how to write like this, because so much, basically the whole point of this book and the original, which is Deutsch für Profis, German for professionals, which I also have, is that Wolf Schneider, who was a very successful journalist in Germany, he's just kind of annoyed by how people write. He thinks it's bad. He thinks it's clunky and not readable. That's this whole thing. It has to be readable, and it's certainly amazing to read this if you want to be a journalist or otherwise write for a living. But so many people would benefit from reading these books and internalizing what they have to say. I don't agree with every single one of his stances, but most of them certainly. My editor, who gifted me this book, said he's the Pope of journalists in Germany, and I certainly agree with that. I think everybody should read one of these two. I would obviously recommend this one, which is the updated version. It's a bit skinnier, and I think this is from 2014, so it includes stuff like Twitter. It's a bit more modern, while this original version I think is from the 80s or 90s, so that's really, the era that it is from. He also has this book on journalism that I also have, and which I thought was also really interesting, Wörter machen Leute, Magie und Macht der Sprache. It's all about how it's just about words, which sounds like it would be very bland, but it's actually super interesting. Obviously, you should be interested in language or writing or linguistics in some fashion if you're going to write, and if you're going to read this. If you're not at all, then you can do a skippage on this one. But if you are, this is a brilliant book all about the German language, and it had this great part that I really enjoyed about how finding exact definitions is actually super stupid. And I always have to think about that when I see this whole crowd that's like, define what a woman is. And I'm like, it's stupid to ask that question. Think about it again. But that's it. That's what that's my 2 cents of some of the works I have read in the past, mainly 1.5 years, with one exception. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this maybe inspired you to get reading. Oh, I just actually want to shout out the 2 books that I'm reading right now. Right now, I was mainly reading Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides. Sorry about the name butchering. Who is the author of The Virgin Suicides. I'm halfway through this. This is a big book, and I don't like that. It's very well written, though. I literally judged the book by its cover on this one. I just saw Middlesex. That sounds interesting. I thought it was gonna give me non-binary tea, and it's not really giving me that. It's more like intersex and, once again, twincest, tea. But it's beautifully written. It's about everything. And it won the Pulitzer Prize in 2003. I always, whenever I talk to my friends about this, I'm like, so I was continuing to read my incest book, and blah, 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 this came up. It's about immigration, it's about the American dream, it's about American politics, it's about family trauma and family secrets and gender, it's about everything. So if you enjoy thick novels like this, get it. If not, skippage. Because I need to take a break from this, I'm currently reading through Christopher Isherwood's Berlin novels. This edition that I have includes Mr. Norris Changes Trains and Goodbye to Berlin. I've heard about Goodbye to Berlin before, and I've seen the musical, what's it called, Cabaret. I really enjoyed that. Right now I am on Mr. Norris Changes Trains, and I'm really enjoying that as well. And it's just so funny because 1930s Berlin is apparently just like today's Berlin. And there's something so non-judgmental about this style of writing, which I enjoy, because I think a lot of authors in the 30s would have been like, gasp, BDSM and whips. And he's like, oh, and she's whipping him. And then I leave. And I just really enjoy that. It's nicely written, and this is a thicker book. This is also around 500 pages, but it's obviously 2 books in one. And also the letters are big. The font is big, which I like. And it's just wonderfully written. I'm really enjoying this so far. I'm really getting through it quickly. And it's just always funny to me to read about that era of Berlin. I don't know. And this, once again, is, my Between the World Wars obsession coming through. I'm also really excited to read the second one, Goodbye to Berlin. And I read actually something about Goodbye to Berlin. This was in a book which is in general about writing fiction, and it just highlighted how he, certainly in that book, wrote in a way that mirrored cinema with the different scenes and shots through sentences, which I thought was super interesting, because obviously in this era film was just coming up as a new medium, and to see that reflect in written language as well, in fiction, I thought was just super interesting. So I'm really excited to read through that as well. And that's kind of it. I don't know. Yes, it's true. Against popular belief, I can read. And I'm really excited to read some more. As I said, please let me know what your book recommendations are. I know you know a bit about my taste in books. Let me know if you have also read any of these and what your thoughts are. I want to book clubify this. And I guess that's it. Like, comment, subscribe. Share this with your friend who also knows how to read. And also your friends who don't know how to read. I don't judge. This is for everybody. And I will see you in the